Chapter 4. The Real Thing. The third day after the arrival of the new children, we were all friends, and we did not think any more of who was what when suddenly at lunchtime we almost had a quarrel. The new children insisted on giving back some of their share of food, and we wanted to give them some from our plates. Sister Gabriel said, "Boys and girls, all plates are alike, and you should just eat what is in front of you. That's all." When we went out, Philip said, "I don't like it. We have to do something about this." Henry said, "Let's have a meeting." So we all gathered together, and Philip explained, "My point is this. I like to eat fairly well once in a while. Philip is very large and tall. I like my buddies to eat fairly well once in a while too. So I suggest we take turns. One person at each meal passing his plate all around the table, and the rest of us sharing a little off our plates. That will make quite a meal, and by everyone in turn will have a turn to have almost his fill for once. How is that?" "Grand," said Arthur. "Only do you think Sister Gabriel will let us do that?" She didn't seem to approve of everything this noon, except eating just what was placed before us. "Oh," I said, "you don't know Sister Gabriel yet. She understands everything. We will have to but explain. Here she is. Let us ask her." But we never had a chance, because Sister Gabriel spoke first. "Boys and girls," she said, "I have to go down to the village. Diefilt, which is the name, means God made it. I can't help it. It is the name. I haven't called at the post office for 2 weeks. There may be letters or even some food packages for some of you in which we could all share. And we need that extra very badly. So I have to go. Now listen, I won't be long. It's a 3-mile walk. That makes 6 miles both ways. Of course it'll take a little longer coming up again, but I should make it in about 3.5 hours. It's 1:30 now, and I should be back around 5 before it gets really dark. Can you stay here all by yourselves and behave as you did the other times?" We said yes right away. We, that is, all but the new children, were used to that arrangement. About every fortnight, Sister Gabriel went to Diefilt to get the mail and the packages. We always managed nicely all by ourselves while she was gone. That's what happens when there is what grown-ups call an emergency. Then people, especially children, can do things they would have never done before. Sister Gabriel knew she could trust us. But George, looking very worried, spoke up. "Sister, what about Herod's soldiers, the Nazis?" A shadow crossed Sister Gabriel's face. "That is in the hand of God," she said. "However, don't worry about it. If I go now, it is precisely because I have heard, grapevine fashion, that the Nazis have left the neighborhood and are very busy hunting for people on the other side of the Rhine River, 50 miles from here. Otherwise I would not go. And I won't be gone long. So be good. There are 30 slices of bread cut in the kitchen, and 30 apples." "Apples!" we shrieked. "Yes, it is a surprise. You can have a picnic." And after she was gone, we did not do anything for quite a long time. We watched the white wings of her headdress getting smaller and smaller on the road, while the large empty basket she carried kept swinging in the crook of her arm. When she had disappeared, Philip said, "What about having the picnic right now and getting it over with?" We all liked the idea. In those days, we had so little to eat that we were ready to start all over again right after one meal. So we went into the kitchen and brought out the bread and the apples, and we ate it all. I say we, the 30 of us. If I don't speak about everyone, it is only because it would take too much time. Also, it happened that some of us had more ideas than others, and they are the ones I remember best. But the 30 of us were in it, right straight through all together. We could have not done it any other way. After that, we were done with the picnic. George said, "What about playing at the flight into Egypt again? Arthur could be Joseph." Well, I suppose George was rather fed up with being Joseph, especially because of what had taken place last time. Only his offering made that part impossible for me to be Mary again. That is, I too had to offer to give up my part. That made me mad, not only because I liked to be Mary, but because if I were to give up my part, I wanted to do so all by myself, not pushed into it, so to speak, by somebody else. So I said, "No, George, you make an excellent Joseph." I felt ashamed because George looked so pleased. George is really nice, though he is stubborn. "But," I went on, "I don't have to be Mary. Suzanne could be." Suzanne was one of the new little girls. She always seemed scared and unhappy. I had been looking after her a bit, and I did think that playing the part would cheer her up, only I didn't know if she would like it or not. What about Suzanne? I said, putting my arm around her. At once Suzanne brightened up and said eagerly, I know how to be Mary. I was Mary back home at the library. Lahore, Joyce, and Paris. Splendid, cried George at once. He did not speak any more of giving up his part. Suzanne had dark hair. And though I was not sorry to be Mary again, yet I was the only one who had given up a part, which is what I wanted. Everyone was pleased. George came forward and took Suzanne by the hand. He seemed all excited. Not at all as he had been when I was Mary. And he announced that we Egyptians had to gather at the bottom of the garden slope, because the Holy Family would start the journey from Galilee at the top of the slope, and they would go way down to Egypt land. Suzanne asked, What about a donkey? She is right, said Henry. We have never thought about it before. What about it, Philip? Philip is much larger than us. He is from Normandy, and the people there are large and blond, and they shave as Americans do. Though, of course, Philip did not shave. Not yet. Fine, he said with his usual bright smile. He bent his back, and Suzanne climbed on his shoulders. Then I put Louis the little one in George's arms. I mean, Joseph's, because I thought Philip had enough to carry for the time being. And I said to Suzanne, I mean, Mary, you can always take Jesus in your arms when you rest on the road. Then we all of Egyptians ran down to the bottom of the slope. We could see the Holy Family up there, and right away we were delighted with Susan's acting. She turned her head partly around, shaded her eyes with her hand, and looked down the valley behind her. Good, said Henry. She's looking for Herod's soldiers. They're coming, shrieked Suzanne. She is good, approved Henry placidly. We all called, Come down to Egypt, quick. While we were waving, we saw Suzanne slip off Philip's back and run toward us at top speed. She tumbled into the midst of us, shaking from head to foot. They're coming, she yelled. And suddenly Philip and George were among us, panting. They're coming, the Nazis are coming. What? We shrieked, and we all raced up the slope and looked, the smaller ones taking turns on Philip's back. Far, far down the valley road, 2 green spots with helmets were moving toward us on bicycles. We looked at one another, terrified. Then I don't know how, but Henry, Arthur, Denise, and we all said at once, The cave. And we ran toward the back of the house. The others followed us. Henry said to all of us, No time for explanations. The 4 of us know about a cave. Arthur, do you think you can find it again all by yourself? Yes, said Arthur quietly and firmly. All right, said Henry. Then you, the Jewish boys and girls, go with Arthur and hide in the cave and stay there and do everything Arthur tells you to do. And wait. He ran inside the house and came back with an empty pitcher, and he gave it to Arthur. Take this and fill it with water at the stream, for drinking. Nobody knows how long you'll have to stay hidden. Arthur said briefly, Thanks. No matter what happens, we won't budge from the cave until one of you comes to give us the all-clear signal. Let's go. The Jewish children moved right along. They did not make any fuss or ask questions. They were used to danger. It took less time for them to disappear than it takes for us to tell it. Then when they were gone, Henry spoke up. Listen, all of you. The hunt is on. Within half an hour, the Nazis will be here. They are going to ask questions, and we cannot betray them. If we do, the Jewish boys and girls will be taken away, and we know the rest. So I suggest we play dumb. We don't answer. Not a thing. Not even good day. Do you understand? We don't speak. Not one word. Not one word. We all said, That's right. We don't speak. Not one word. Not one word. Then we went back to the front part of the yard. There was no use climbing on Philip's shoulders anymore. The Nazis were plainly in sight. Henry looked more upset than I had seen him. I wish Sister Gabriel was here, he kept saying to me. I ran in the house, looked at the clock, and came back. It's nearly 5 o'clock now, I said. She cannot be long. She should be here any minute. Henry shook his head. If she were, he answered, we would already see her on the road. It looks bad. Let's play, I suggested. What? Asked Henry gloomily. Leapfrog, I said. It was one of Henry's favorite games outside of make-believe. All right, come on, all of you, called Henry. We're going to play leapfrog, all of us. So it was when the 2 Nazi soldiers came up into the yard, pushing their bicycles in front of them, up the slope. We were leaping over one another at an ever-increasing speed in an unending line. Good day, children, said the soldiers in perfect French. We all stopped playing, but we did not answer. We just looked at them. Good day. Can't you answer? Silence. Are you mute and deaf? Silence. Why, it was a hard climb, said one of the children. Am I thirsty? Any water around here, children? No answer. Come on, you pretty little girl. Won't you show a soldier where to drink? And one of the soldiers extended his hand toward Denise and caressed her cheek. Abruptly, Denise sat down on the ground. We all laughed. That was a big mistake because it made the soldiers mad. All right, the one who looked rather young said sharply. We will take care of you all later. Come on, he said to the other soldier. We don't need them. We can search the house alone. In they went, and we all sat down on the grass. There was nothing else to do. We heard them going all through the house. We knew they could not find anything, because the Jewish children only had the clothes they wore on their back, and as far as beds were concerned, we shared them also, and the 2 blankets each one of us had had. Philip bent his head near the ground and whispered, It's lucky we ate the 30 pieces of bread and the apples right away. It certainly was, for the Nazis would have known for sure that 10 of us were hiding somewhere. Presently, the soldiers came back and they made a sign for us to go inside. We did, and they waited until we were all seated. Then the young one, who seemed to be in command, said, Children, we don't want to be mean to you, but you have to answer us. Don't you have other children with you? Just say yes or no. Why don't you answer? We are your friends, really. Are there Jewish children with you? Not a word from the 20 of us. You nasty brats, bellowed the soldier. I know how to make you talk. A shiver ran through me, and I glanced out the window, hoping to see Sister Gabriel's white headdress coming up the path. But the road was deserted, and the dusk was falling. It's no use looking out the window to see if your teacher is coming, I heard the soldier say, and I knew he was speaking to me. Your teacher has been caught. She's in prison. So you see, you better talk. Sister Gabriel in prison? I recalled the young man's phrase, You could be shot for this. And as I opened my mouth in horror, my foot was stepped on ruthlessly. It was Denise sitting next to me. The foot said, Pretend, pretend. Fool them. I understood, and I made myself look like an idiot. That one looks stupid, said the soldier, who was older. She certainly does, said the other one meanly. Better try this one. He looks bright. He meant Henry. Come here, boy. Yes, you. Henry got up and went forward slowly. Now, said the young soldier, you tell us where the Jewish children are. If you don't, you will be sorry. No one is against us who is smart. Now speak up, or... Henry stood facing the Nazis in silence. Take him away, the young soldier ordered the other one, and do as I told you. The other soldier took Henry by the shoulder and pushed him out of the room. Henry managed to throw a glance at us. He was very pale, and his fists were clenched tight, his lips tight, and in his eyes we read, Hold on. The door closed behind us, and I wanted to shriek, Henry, Henry, but I dug my nails into my hand instead. See what happens to bad children, said the young Nazi. Now, boys and girls, don't be so foolish. Tell the truth. I'm going to stay right here until one of you speaks up. I'm in no hurry. I can wait all day, all night, forever. He put his feet up on a chair, drew a pipe out of his pocket, lit it, and puffed away. The clock tick-tocked, endlessly, and we sat there with our mouths closed, hardly daring to move. I'm sure we were all thinking of Sister Gabriel, the Jewish children, the cave, Henry, and wishing it were all over soon. Pretty soon, it was dark. The soldier did not return on the electricity. He just sat there, and I think at one time he went to sleep, so quiet he was. The other soldier came back without Henry, and the young one said, Did he talk? No, the other one said. You're no good, snapped the young one. I should have taken charge of him. Did you give him plenty? Plenty, said the other one. And all this was said in German, and only George could understand it, because his parents were Allistons, and he told us later what the Nazis had said. It was very hard on George that he did understand, and he cannot be blamed for starting to cry. We didn't know why he did it. We all felt so miserable the others joined him. Presently you could hear sobs all over the room. The Nazis got up and yelled, To bed, schnell, schnell, no supper, you did not talk, to bed, schnell. So we went up and slipped into our beds. I guess most of us cried ourselves to sleep. I know I did, and I was so startled when I felt pressure on of a hand on my shoulder. I opened my eyes, and in the dark I faintly saw a familiar figure leaning over me. It was Henry. He quickly put his hand over my mouth and whispered, "Listen." I got out. He put me in the coal shed. He's not as mean as the younger one. He's the old guard, the kind that fought in the First World War. What did he do to you? He shook me like a plum tree, saying all the while, "I'm going to thrash you within an inch of your life, and then we'll see if you find your tongue." Then we got to the coal shed, and he threw me in and locked me up. I heard his footsteps going up the hill, and I was so afraid that those in the cave would make a noise and he would discover them. How did you get out? My good scout knife. I cut a small hole out of a plank in the door very neatly. Then I slipped my hand through and found the key was right in the lock. Wonderful. Did you go to the cave? No, I don't dare. I didn't know where the Nazis were, and I figured out if they came looking for me and didn't find me in the coal shed, it would be better for them to see me coming out of the house and not search for me in the hills. But listen, Janet, one of us has to go to the caves now and tell the others what is happening, or they might wonder and come out and be caught. Besides, they must be cold and hungry. Well, we're hungry too. We've had no supper, I said. Well, I didn't either, said Henry, but we've got to get some bread over to them. There's no telling how long this will last. Where are the Nazis now? I asked. Asleep on the sofa in the front room. So you see, this is our chance. He paused and then said, Janet, would you mind going? I felt cold all over, but I said quietly, with you? No, he said, because as I told you, if I'm not in the coal shed, that might make matters worse. You go with Philip. Why Philip? Because he's big and he could carry 4 blankets easily. He could go alone if he knew where the cave was, but he doesn't. So that's why you have to go along. And then you can carry 2 loaves of bread, too. I said, I suppose they've counted the loaves already? Perhaps they did, said Henry. Let's hope not. Anyway, they might think we ate them while they were asleep. Are you ready? Swallowing hard, I said, yes. Good, said Henry. Go down and get dressed, and then go down the back way, and go out the back door, the side way, the way I'm going now. You creep along the wall of the house very quietly. Carry your shoes because of the noise of the wooden soles on the gravel, until you come to the boys' dormitory. Then stand under the window. Philip will throw you the blankets, and he will jump down, because for him it is not very high, and he can get a foothold on the wisteria. What about the bread? I'll get it when I go down now, and I'll leave it under the boys' dormitory window. Ready? I said, suppose they wake up when you go to the kitchen. I have to take a chance. Those in the cave have to eat too. Suppose, I said, they wake up later and catch Philip and me. Suppose, retorted Henry impatiently. If you don't want to go so, just say, I'll ask a niece. Was I mad? But I kept my peace. Henry seemed nervous. Nevertheless, what a relief when he added, it's all fixed. Miss Suppose. George is going to hang a white handkerchief at the boy's window. It'll remain there as long as the coast is clear. I bit my lips not to interrupt. Luckily went on, and if you don't see the hanky, watch out. It means they're roaming about. And if they are, I have no suggestions. Use your wits. The only watchword, no matter what happens, at what cost, don't betray. All set? Yes, I said firmly. I did not want to hear the name of Denise mentioned again. But as Henry got up, he gave me a friendly sharp poke in the ribs with his elbow, and I felt ready to face all the Nazis in the world. There was not much to say about our getting to the cave. It went like clockwork. I got dressed, went down the back way, holding my shoes in my hand, got the side door, crept along the wall barefoot, and no sooner had I reached the boys' dormitory window than 4 blankets came down on my head, one after the other. Before I had disentangled myself, Philip had slipped down. He was barefoot and had not bothered to take his shoes. We picked up everything, including the 2 loaves of bread, which was right where Henry said he would put them, and waving goodbye to George, who was tying the hanky at the window and was to remain on watch all the while, we skipped across the yard. Then I put my shoes back on, and in no time we were at the cave. Philip stretched flat on the ground. He put his head in the crack and called softly, Arthur! At once we heard Arthur's voice. Yes, Philip, very softly, too. We handed the blankets down and the bread, and then we ourselves slipped down. At first we couldn't see anyone, but as our eyes got accustomed to the dark, we saw the whole group huddled together at the far end of the cave, where it was warmest. Were they happy to have the blankets? Arthur said quietly, as if he was not nervous at all, The boys are taking turns at watching. It's my turn now. That's why I was so near the entrance when you came. I heard you coming up, and I knew right away it was you and not the soldiers. I knew, too, by the footsteps, and that there was a girl. He added quite sternly, Why didn't Henry come? Why did he let the girl get into this jam? So we had to tell him everything that had happened, how Henry had had to stay in the coal shed, and I had to show Philip the way. Then Arthur told us they had heard the footsteps of the Nazis coming up the hill, and that he had sat right on the boulder above the cave for a long time, and that they could have smelled the smoke from his pipe. While Arthur talked, he broke one of the loaves of bread in two. He went on, "We don't know how long before we see you again. We'll save as much as possible." Then he broke separate small pieces off and handed them around and gave Philip and me a piece too, and we would not take it, of course. But Arthur said, "If you don't eat, I won't either." And we knew how determined and obstinate he could be, so we ate, and it did taste good. Philip told everyone, "We will be right over as soon as they are gone." And Arthur repeated, "No matter what happens, we will not budge from here until one of you comes to fetch us." Then we had to leave. The whole group stood around in the dark. All of us were terribly afraid of being caught, but we did not speak about it. We just hugged and kissed one another over and over. Cautiously, Philip and I crept out. We went stealthily down from bush to bush behind rocks, too. Finally, there was the house in the midst of the yard, and thank God the hanky was still floating at the window. I took off my shoes. Philip said, "I'll go first, alone. You stay hidden here. If everything is all right and you see me going up the wisteria, shoot across too, and crawl across the wall as you did before, and go back through the side door." "All right," I whispered, my eyes on George's hanky up there. Philip made a dash across. I saw him starting to climb the wisteria, and I shot across too. But as I did, off went the hanky. I crashed against the wall. I heard the side door open and shut, and 4 heavy boots on the gravel. Flat against the wall, panic-stricken in the dark, I knew I was caught if I did not think fast. As the beam of a flashlight pierced the night, I quickly put my shoes back on and slowly, boldly walked right out into the yard in the direction of the John, just as if I had come from the front door. The voice of the young soldier cracked the air. "Stop or I shoot." And at the same time the flashlight revolved and rested on me. I stopped. He came across quickly, followed by the other soldier. "Only that stupid little girl of this afternoon," he said in a disgusted voice, and all in French, for my benefit, I suppose. "What are you doing out here at this time of night? Spying? I'll teach you, huh?" He grabbed me roughly by the arm and pushed me toward the side door. Heavens, I didn't want him to start questioning. So I struggled like mad, pointing to the John all the time. The older soldier said, "She was probably just going to the John." "Well, ask her. See if you can get more out of the girl than you did from the boy." At once I started to yell. "Shut up," bawled the young soldier, dropping me like a hot potato. Whereupon I ran full speed to the John, and there I stayed quite a while. And when I came out, I walked proudly right in the open, past the Nazis who were talking. Dawn had come. I went upstairs and I tumbled into bed at last.